in what known as the Schomburg Line that effectively claimed an additional 30,000 square miles for Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
So it means, if based on what is documented here, that the British had encroached on Venezuela's land.
Yeah. What?
Right, what they call the Guyanans was Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
And Britain bought that part of the Guyanas from the Dutch in 1841.
Mm-hmm. Yes, go ahead.
So, with a treaty with the Netherlands. So, what we'll have to find out is whether or not, to what extent the Netherlands, when they had owned that part of the world, had encroached on lands of Venezuela.
Right.
So,
what we're finding before you go on to the British
signed the treaty.
Yes.
The treaty did not define a western boundary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the British commissioned this British naturalist to draw a boundary.
It's Robert Schomburg.
Right, Robert Schomburg. And in 1835, the survey resulted in what known as the Schomburg Line that effectively claimed an additional 30,000 square miles for Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
So it means, if based on what is documented here, that the British had encroached on Venezuela's land.
Yeah. What is not in that document is what it's before 1841, with the Treaty of Munster and the 1648 treaty between the Dutch and the Spanish, which established the Essequibo River as a boundary between the two respective territories, which would also speak in favor of Venezuela's claim. But they had said then that there was imprecise language there in that treaty and ambiguity. So and here we're talking about land that belonged to the, if you're going to use the word belong, that the people who were here first were the indigenous people, right, Dr. Vincent? So we're talking about
the Western world, through colonization, the Dutch, the British, they took the Dutch and the Guyanas took the lands away from the indigenous peoples.
Right, and here we are.
So the land was not theirs in the first place.
And here we are with
this is the problem we are facing in the world.
Yes.
Sister Kabu, is that all the problems in Ghana, what is happening between Ghana and Venezuela, that is because of colonialism and continuance of imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
These lines were arbitrarily drawn.
Yes. Yes.
And if the British gave the Schomburg the rights or to draw the line, then of course he will draw the line in favor of the British.
And in that way was actually claiming land. I know you talk about 1841. This is what we're talking about.
1841. Yes.
Right.
So prior to my mistake. The Venezuela boundary dispute officially began in 1841. That dispute was going on since 1841.
Right. And so
right?
this line...
Because from 1814, we know that Great Britain had acquired British Guiana by treaty with the Netherlands.
Right. So Venezuela is... What is Venezuela saying now? Venezuela seems to be saying that this line, the Schomburg line that you're talking about, they're saying, are they going all the way back to the Schomburg line to say that this is where the source of a contention is?
Remember, the Venezuela appealed to the United States at the time, right? Because remember, with President Monroe, with the Monroe Doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine stated that, Europe, the European powers had no claims to the Americas. That is because America was expanding to become an imperialist nation. And so they saw the European encroachment in the West, in Latin America, as so they told these countries, look, the Americas now belong to us. So Venezuela appealed to the United States. And that appeal was never it was never really officially documented in the sense that America didn't really rule in favor of Venezuela in any significant way.
Mm-hmm.
So that dispute is still ongoing.
Still ongoing. And then to reiterate something that you read now from that document, that historical document. So that took us from 1841 to the arbitration finally in 1899. That,
right. So in 1876, Venezuela protested, right, and broke diplomatic relations. And in 1895, the United States invoked the Monroe Doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the arbitration in it, however, when the Commission finally rendered the decision on October 3rd, 1899, it directed that the border follow the Schomburg line. In other words, the Americans agreed that the Venezuela should follow the Schomburg line. But that does not mean that the Schomburg line is the correct line.
Mm-hmm. And
because of course,
that document, exactly, because
both Britain and Britain and America were in alliance in a sense in terms of the world. Mm-hmm. So they would not rule in favor of Spain or Venezuela, who had won its independence from Spain.
And this is where Venezuela is today saying that they do not recognize that 1899 arbitral award, which ruled in favor of the Schomburg line. That award actually solidified the borders of what then was British Guyana. But you also, in that document that you have, also pointed to the fact that Venezuela ratified an agreement. Was this 1899 or was it later in 1966?
No.
In the 60s, because I know that there was 1899. So Venezuela raised this issue in the 1840s, 70s, that Guyana, the border.
Let me read it from here. Mm-hmm. In 1876, Venezuela protested, broke diplomatic relations with Great Britain, and appealed to the United States for assistance, citing the Monroe Doctrine as justification for U.S. involvement. For the next 19 years, Venezuela repeatedly petitioned for U.S. assistance, calling on its neighbor to the north to intervene by either sponsoring arbitration or intervening with force. The United States responded by expressing concern but did little to facilitate a resolution. Right?
But sometime after
it was never resolved.
But sometime later, Dr. Vincent, in 1899.
October till 1899.
Yes.
The United States, I'm going to read it from here. Great Britain under pressure in South Africa with the Boers and managing an empire that spanned the globe could ill afford another conflict. Lord Salisbury's government submitted the dispute to the American Boundary Commission and said nothing else of the Monroe Doctrine. Venezuela enthusiastically submitted to arbitration, certain that the Commission would decide in its favor. However, when the Commission finally rendered a decision on October 3rd, 1899, it directed that the border follow the Schomburg line, allowing, although of rejection of Great Britain's increasing extravagant claims, the ruling preserved the 1835 demarcation. Mm-hmm. Disappointed, the Venezuelans quietly ratified the Commission's finding.
So Venezuela, although disappointed, because I think this is what Maduro is saying, that...
they ratified the finding. So the Venezuelans have to go back to their historical document and see and verify that. That's what Maduro and them. If you ratify the finding, it means that you agreed.
And then we have the 1966 Geneva Agreement. I'm not quite sure how much if that document references that Geneva Agreement between Guyana and Venezuela in 1966, which later on agreed to resolve that dispute through peaceful means. and then to seek international arbitration. But this is something that obviously, if you had a ratification in 1899 and then there was another 1966 issue, then it points to dissatisfaction.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing. But we have to go back to the thing. If Britain claimed another 30,000 square miles after the Schomburg line, they went back and claimed another. When gold was found, they claimed another 30,000 square miles. Yes.
So looking at this through our post-colonial lenses, I think for us as African-centered people, we find ourselves with a dilemma. I'm not quite sure about you, but for me personally, that I'm firmly in Guyana's camp on this. And I'll say later on in the program, I've been saying it for the last 2 weeks. You're looking at 2/3 of Guyana now. But then here we have a situation where land is in contention, where the land, the rhetoric coming from Guyana is that the land originally, Essequibo, belongs to Guyana, to Venezuela. This is what Venezuela is saying. Guyana is saying the same thing. But the historical records, especially from the archives that you just read, are showing you that, well, first of all, it belonged to the indigenous people. The people in that.
Well, the land belonged to the indigenous people with colonialism, right? Mm-hmm. When the Dutch had control of the Guyanas, what we called it was the Guyanas. And then the French came, had part of the Guyanas. So you had the Netherlands there, right? Suriname and all those places, what we call Suriname today. Although that was called the Guyanas. It just belonged to the Dutch. Mm-hmm. So the British made a treaty with the Dutch, and they bought that part of the Guyanas and called it British Guyana.
Mm-hmm. And I'm
right?
seeing...
They still have the right?
We have
and then the Suriname still remained with the Dutch, and then the Cayenne, the French came in and carved up Cayenne, but it's already drawn.
Yes.
First, the lands were taken away from the indigenous people. Mm-hmm. And because I'm sure, because remember the Amerindians,
they are still there.
In that region, they had no dispute. They were Venezuela had Amerindians, just one family,
right, one land.
They were trading and crossing. They didn't have no line to say, well, this is my territory or this is your territory.
They were sharing the Essequibo River and the Orinoco River together. The thing about it now, though, is that the people who are in that region, in the Essequibo region, that is disputed, 125,000 people out of the 800,000 Guyana population, that these people, for the main majority, the last I heard in terms of statistics, 90-odd% of the people living in this disputed region are Amerindians. These are original indigenous people. So do they get a say in all of this is the question.
They have no say. They have been marginalized. They have no say in the dispute.
Right. There's another thing that we see happening. Colonialism, of course, is at work. And so we see... obviously, gold is there now. In the referendum today, I know they're asking, one of the questions is, should that region become a state of Venezuela, and should the people, the Amerindians living there, should they be granted Venezuela citizenship? That's on the referendum. So there is that. But what do you think about the extent now, the American involvement at this stage? Because America seems to be...
No, you see, we had to go back to the Monroe Doctrine. If you go on, I wanted for people in the Caribbean to read the Monroe Doctrine and what it says.
Yes.
If it's easy to Google, you Google the Monroe Doctrine and you see what the United States, when it began to grow its Western expansion outward.
Yeah.
Right? It saw Latin America and the Caribbean as its sphere of influence. Mm-hmm. And it warned Britain and other European powers to back off. This is our territory. Mm-hmm. In essence, the Americans from the Monroe Doctrine said, look, the Americas belong to us.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, coupled with the Monroe Doctrine, which, says you can't interfere if you're European, you can't interfere on this side of the world, what we claim is ours, the principle of uti possidetis, which really is, it complements in a way the Monroe Doctrine for them, because it originated in that context of decolonization, particularly for Latin America, Africa, and Asia, which means that as you possess, as you own it as you possess it. So basically that's what it translates to. But we also have a situation now in the region where we have the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, and we have AFRICOM on the continent of Africa, which is the militarization of Africa. We have SOUTHCOM in these waters, which is a militarization of the Caribbean and South American waters. So we see now where Venezuela is saying that SOUTHCOM is actually in Guyana. And this for us is a crazy situation. And it seems to be true, because I saw something this morning where the presence is really there. What does that mean for the region when you have the American military in Guyana now to defend, so to speak, the borders against Venezuela?
Well, you see, that whole conflict with Venezuela and the United States, is ongoing, and other nations are joining in terms of proxies, in terms of where your allegiance stand with America in the region.
Yes. We're going to continue the conversation on this, but what you have done for us, Dr. Vincent, is really to put this in a historical context, and thank you so much for that. That document that you have, I'd really like a copy of that, because this is straight from...
I'll forward it to you.
Yes, please, because this is straight from the horse's mouth. This is what they were doing, and recording at the same time. It's like...
Yeah, this is from the U.S. State Department archives.
Yeah, so it's like WikiLeaks. Thank you so much, Dr. Vincent. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I will forward it to you.
Yes. And congratulations on your book. The book is out. Can you tell us a little bit about it and where we can get a copy of it?
Yes, the book is out. There is a website called Caribbean Books Network, and I can forward you the website, and yes, you can share it with people in Jamaica and the region.
All right. Thank you so much.
But the book is out, and we are doing book launching, so I guess...
Yes.
At another time, you can have me on to talk about the book.
Most definitely. When I've read the book, I've already ordered my copy. I hope it's on its way to me, and I hope that we can talk soon about it. Thank you so much, Dr. Vincent.
Sure. Thank you very much.
That is involved in this. We're standing by for my next special guest, Mohammed, whom we have introduced. United Kingdom. Good morning to you, David. How are you doing?
I am great, thank you. I hope you're well also, and greetings to all of the listeners, all of the beautiful people of Jamaica that I miss so much.
Greetings to you, my brother. Thank you so much for joining us from cold England this morning. So we're looking at this situation that's unfolding. We had Dr. Godfrey Vincent just putting that into a historical context for us. And today we're watching to see where the referendum goes. 5 questions. With you, I want to start with what happened at, first of all, your perspective, because give us a minute or so of your perspective on the historical context of this.
Right. Well, historically, as with many other situations, many other land disputes, many other border settlements, and something that I intend to speak about very soon as well is the humanitarian crisis in the Congo, which is probably the world's most ignored humanitarian situation. All of these issues, coming back to Venezuela, Guyana, and even Palestine, Israel for that matter, most of it, if not all of it, goes back to Europe European theft, European interference, and the establishment of systems of government and administration that continue in motion even after they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So this region called Essequibo in Guyana was first taken up by the Dutch. And the region of the Netherlands in particular that occupied there was a region called Zeeland. Now, that alone tells a whole story by itself, because you'll notice in the word now, there is Zeeland in the Netherlands. Now there's New Zealand, which is another country that was stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in Europe, you have Hampshire. In America, you have New Hampshire. In Europe, you have Oxford. In America, you have New Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
In England, you have York. In America, you have New York.
Mm-hmm.
And south to the United States, you have Mexico. And then in the United States of America, they stole part of Mexico and they called it New Mexico. Mm-hmm. So this was how Essequibo was first established, by the Zealanders, who also stole land later on, which became New Zealand, but they were Dutch. And then you have a back and forth, which I'll skip, between the British and the Dutch, and they're going back and forth. And then, of course, British Guyana was established as 3 colonies, which were Demerara, Essequibo, and Berbice. And that was what we knew as Guyana. Now, who the land belongs to? It belongs to the original people.
Mm-hmm. Who are still there.
And one of the, yes, but hold on, not necessarily the same original peoples that we may identify as Amerindian. Of course, they have a legitimate claim.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost ironic that one of the world's greatest professors of black studies, who has dealt with that topic of indigenous African people in the Americas, is actually from Guyana.
True.
And I'm referring to the great Professor Ivan Van Sertima.
Yeah, of course, they came before Columbus.
Ivan Van Sertima, who did that whole series on African presence in the West before Columbus, will show you that African people were there originally. So, I mean, that's historical background. But the bottom line is, America got involved on the invitation of Venezuela. Venezuela became independent since the early 1800s. Guyana became independent in 1966. Mm-hmm. So, yes, there was this dispute. Yes, there was this disagreement. But Venezuela wanted to settle it with England. England, who had territories all over the world, were not interested in settling it. So Venezuela, in the early 1800s, broke off diplomatic ties with England, and they went to America and asked America to help them settle this border dispute. Mm-hmm. Now, when they did that, America, under President Cleveland, Grover Cleveland, he re-invoked this very threatening law that looms over all of us up to this day in 2023 in the Caribbean. And that is the Monroe Doctrine. Mm-hmm. So the first president of the United States, James Monroe, established a position that we're not going to seek to colonize further nations in the Western Hemisphere, but if any Europeans from outside interfere in our hemisphere, we will take the position of the world policeman. Mm-hmm. So Venezuela breaks diplomatic ties with England. They go to America to help. America under President Cleveland says we will help under our fifth president's doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine. And then, of course, Britain, under their prime minister at the time, Lord Salisbury, said, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. This was 1897. And they agreed. This is all parties now. But we can't really say Guyana, because Guyana, of course, was really Britain.
British Guyana.
Along with Venezuela, who were already independent at the time, and America. came together and said, listen, let us form an international tribunal to discuss this matter. Let them do the research. Let them come up with all the findings. Let them study the history. And then they will make a decision, and all of us will agree to it. They would have asked, is everyone fine with that? Yes, everyone agreed to. So, this commission in 1897 consisted of 5 judges as a panel. 2 from Britain, who would have been representing, of course, British Guyana's interests. 2 from America, who were representing the Venezuelan interests. And a 3rd party, who was Russian. They met and resided in Paris, in France, and studied extensively the land, the maps, the cartography, the history, the boundaries, the territory. And then 2 years later, in 1899, they handed down their decision. And the decision was 3 against 2. Of course, the 2 British and the Russians voted for, and the 2 Americans voted against. The decision was that 94% of the disputed territory should remain with British Guyana, and 6% of that land should go to Venezuela, which was the mouth of the Orinoco River and a short stretch of the Atlantic coastline. Now, of course, Venezuela were not happy, but 6 years later, in 1905, the issue was settled. Both sides accepted the boundary. They got a German cartographer to draft the map. He was Robert Hermann Schomburg. Everyone looked at it. Everyone said, okay, we will accept this. And it was settled in 1905. Now, there are 2 factors that would have reignited it. One is, of course, and let's just be plain and impolite about it, Guyana has recently discovered oil. And Guyana now is on the threshold of untold economic success stories and financial liberation, especially coming out of a period of such hardship.
And I want to pause for a minute to talk about
that. I know it's a lot.
No, it's a lot, but it's very, what you're doing is pretty good, because we were able to follow the conversation and to follow the history, especially because we just heard from Dr. Vincent, who had the archival document out of the U.S. archives, just laying out America's involvement, and what you're doing for us is to fill that in and to kind of widen it out for us to see who else were, who are the other persons who were involved. Russia, for example, that the vote was 3-2, and that fills a gap, because Venezuela seem to have always had this dissatisfaction with the arbitration tribunal that came out of Paris in 1899. They seem to have had a problem with it over time, even though they ratified it. So what you're doing for us is helping us to understand it a bit more. But to take us now to this period, where here we are again. This has been ongoing, because obviously I think from 2015 it all came up again. Let us understand what's happening in the region at this time around 2015, or even before. What was happening in Guyana before the discovery of this? The world's greatest crude oil reserves. What was the socio-economic situation in Guyana?
Well, of course, Guyana has been known to have a difficult economy. Going back to the days of course, their first president, J.D. Reagan, who was succeeded by the great Forbes Burnham, who I believe has been the most vilified leader of any Caribbean nation. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of others would want to claim that they are the ones who've been most targeted, but I think without a doubt it's been them. Mm-hmm. We admire and respect Forbes Burnham as one of the four founding fathers of CARICOM in 1973, along with Michael Manley, Dr. Eric Williams, and Errol Barrow of Barbados. Mm-hmm. But in 1982, apparently, under Forbes Burnham, the issue did come up again. And there's even a calypso out of Guyana that is speaking on the matter and saying that they're not going to give up any of the territory. Mm-hmm. Now, the economic hardship in Guyana has been pretty harsh because their main mineral resources, they've been relying on bauxite and timber, but they also have the added complication of being the largest territory in CARICOM by far. I mean, Guyana is the size of England, but England's population is almost 60 million. Guyana's population is still under 1 million.
800,000.
So they've had, about 800,000. I mean, it will be a million soon. Mm-hmm. And so they've had these difficulties. They're also the only country in the English-speaking Caribbean that has had racial violent conflict between the Africans and the Indians. I mean, there are reasons for that, which could take a different analysis.
Yes.
But and the whole idea of the black market, what they call the white market, was prominent in the 1980s. The scarcity of a lot of goods that were being sold. But Guyana has given us so many brilliant writers and researchers and icons in the African Caribbean community. I mean, Forbes Burnham himself, who was actually the brainchild of Caricesta, right? As well as, of course, Professor Ivan Van Sertima, one of the greatest Black Studies professors, also Cecil Bexmore, even the great Eddie Grant, who was largely responsible for bringing Caribbean music into Britain, along with the Jamaican reggae artists.
And even though Jamaica has adopted wholesalely Walter Rodney, the Jamaican people, not the government, of course.
Walter Rodney, of course. Because Walter Rodney was in Jamaica when he wrote Groundings with My Brothers. Right, but how Europe underdeveloped Africa, coming out of Guyana as well was a major factor. And even England's most prominent black member of parliament. He's a member of parliament for Tottenham, David Lammy. Yeah. He also has Guyanese parents. And, I mean, many others. Joy Reid, who's on MSNBC in America, she has Guyanese parentage as well. So Guyana has contributed so much.
Right, so I want to look...
So this is becoming a issue of consciousness.
Yeah. So I want to also look at Venezuela, because these are two countries now that obviously Guyana is... It's unequal in many ways in terms of, you're talking about, although the size of England, 800,000 population, most of Guyana is rainforest. That entire area, the Essequibo area, is mainly rainforest, by the way. But so Venezuela itself, just during Chavez, I think, and after Chavez, if we could take it from there.
Yeah, well, Venezuela, of course, is going through its own crisis as we speak. I mean, Trinidad and Tobago's population is 1.4 million. It's estimated. No one knows the actual figures, but it's estimated that right now, as much as approximately, estimates go up between 7 and 11% of the Trinidad population are persons who came across on boats from Venezuela over the last 5 or 6 years. We have expressed concern not about the presence of anyone, because we have always been a people to welcome anyone else who is in need of any kind of exile. But when we have Africans from Africa who actually intermarry into African Trinidadian population, when we have them being detained unfairly in detention centers, and persons from other parts of the region coming in and not receiving the same kind of welcome. We see that Venezuela has been welcomed with open arms. Also, a significant number of Venezuelans have gone into, not as much, but quite a few have gone into Guyana. And then you have had, of course, Colombia. Colombia has had, estimated probably as much as 1 million. And of course, this sort of drives up the crime rate because Venezuela now has the second highest murder rate in the world and the highest murder rate using illegal firearms. 90% of the murders in Venezuela are done with illegal firearms. And they do have again, one report says they have the highest oil deposits, largest oil deposits in the world. So clearly there's a management issue. They have these food shortages. I have a statistic in January 2008, 24.7% of goods were reported to not be available in Venezuela. Food shortages increased again in January 2012, a new record high of 28% of their food needs not available in Venezuela in 2014. And then the fateful day came in 2016, which is when Colombia, imagine, their neighbor, Colombia, opened their borders for 12 hours. And I'm talking about Venezuelans walking across, on foot, driving across. That would have been July the 10th, 2016. And in 12 hours, 35,000 Venezuelans fled their country. And then over the next couple of days, 123,000 Venezuelans crossed into Colombia, seeking food, seeking any kind of opportunity. And that's just 2 days. 123,000 Venezuelans out of a population of approximately 33 million.
Venezuela also has dealt with over the years some serious sanctions coming from the United States and Europe and other countries. They've had some serious sanctions in Venezuela for many, many years. And so it would be interesting to kind of look at, to analyze how that is playing into what is unfolding now from a political perspective. What do you think? What are your own thoughts on the America-Venezuela relationship? Obviously, sanctions were lifted the other day. Some, not all, some were lifted the other day. Yes. And America has gone to Venezuela for oil because now they're in this problem with Russia. So there's also that as we speak. What's your take on all of that?
Well, one of the most interesting things about this is how the tables have changed. Because when the border dispute was being arbitrated between 1897 and 1899, Venezuela were running to America for help. And it was Russia who was siding with Britain against Venezuela. Now, America sees Venezuela as one of its peripheral enemies, and Russia is seen as the ally. So, of course, the whole sphere in the region of the communist influence and the sympathy towards Russia, and, of course, we have the proxy Cuba, and there are now so many good diplomatic relations between Caribbean nations and China. So once Russia, China, and by extension Cuba come in the picture, then America raises red flags. So because since and again, it was somewhat of a military takeover that brought in Hugo Chavez in 1992 into Venezuela. So they tend to scorn those kinds of political/military operations. You see, America doesn't support coups in other countries unless they fund them themselves. You understand? Unless they orchestrate them themselves.
Like the one, similar to the one they were orchestrating in Venezuela up until the time of the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
And Grenada, and the Congo, I mean, the Belgium, and
Sudan.
It's such a consistent pattern.
Yes.
And then all of the African countries, the so-called coup belt, Sudan, Mauritius, Chad, Niger, Ivory Coast,
Libya,
that still have this French dominant influence in the politics and in the military. It's so horrific.
Yeah, America is a rabid psychopathic, character when it comes to its relations, its international relations, and its relations with other countries. So we see the same thing.
But Europe in general, and I mean, my beloved sister, we know how terrible America's history is in that regard.
Yes,
but of course, we can even present arguments to say that England's history is even worse. But you know who else is right up there with those two? France.
Oh, goodness.
Because, again, most of the military and political instability in Africa today is still linked to France.
Right.
Belgium weren't too far behind either, because remember the Belgians, think about this statement. The Belgians took over the Congo from 1885. But the Congo only became a Belgian colony in 1906. That now sound kind of awkward. How could they take over in 1885, but it only became a colony in 1906? So and the reason for that is the whole country, the Congo, which had so much mineral wealth and resources in it, from 1885 to 1906 for 11 years, was the private property of King Leopold. One man owned the whole country. And it was only because of the rumors and the factual reports of the atrocities and crimes against humanity that he was guilty of, killing millions of Africans. King Leopold killed more Africans than Hitler killed Jews. Yeah. But he's not even considered a bad man in many circles. And so in 1906, Belgium took a decision and said, look, we have to take this country from this one man. Not to give independence to the people. They took it from him and the country took it over. The parliament took it over.
Hold the line.
But they have such a history that is consistent with all of this.
Hold the line for me, David. Let me take a quick break. Border dispute. A referendum is underway in Venezuela today. That is in spite of the fact that Guyana had asked the International Court of Justice to intervene. I don't know what Guyana thought. The ICJ, I think, would not have done that on any day, but they had expected that would have happened to stop the referendum. And the ICJ gave its ruling on Friday. Ruling interesting because it depends on which side of the fence you're on, or if you're on the fence, how you would have interpreted this, right, David? Because Guyana says they won at the ICJ. Venezuela said it was a victory for them, and those who were on the fence said, well, this is a good thing. Because basically what the ICJ has said is Venezuela shouldn't do anything to upset the status quo. But Guyana really was asking for the referendum, for the ICJ to rule on whether the referendum could go ahead. But that referendum is underway as we speak. President Maduro has already voted, and it is a festive spirit. I'm looking at the newspapers coming out of Venezuela. It's a festive spirit. It's high parties like Carnival that's happening down there. Spring Gardener coming kind of thing in Venezuela this morning. People are out in their numbers voting on these 5 questions, which we want to get to those 5 questions. But I want to wrap this, Brother David, because what you have done here in terms of kind of broadening this through a global lens is to say wherever the colonizers go, they have created these problems and have left people, because this is not just land, it's people, warring against each other for land that their ancestors lived on centuries before. Now, bearing that in mind, what do you think is is there a reparations conversation to be had even in this dispute that is going on right now in Guyana, Venezuela?
Again, we must ground this particular conversation in the research of Professor Ivan Van Sertima. We cannot just leave that as peripheral leisure reading. We have to recognize our African heritage and legacy and connect it to our existence as CARICOM state. If we ignore that, then that would be to our own detriment, and others will be able to come in and take advantage and continue a legacy of theft on their part. You know, I have one unfortunate thing to say in regards to my research on this Venezuela-Guyana situation, and that is, and this is not entirely so, but I have noticed that most of the people that I've spoken to who are Venezuelan or who grew up in Venezuela were very much aware of this land dispute. Very much aware. They learned about it in elementary school. A lot of our people from Guyana, though, and again, there are, of course, several exceptions, but I'm talking about by majority. A lot of our people in Guyana were not as familiar with it until it became an issue. Because remember, Venezuela were independent since I think it was 1811. Guyana, even after we became independent in 1966, we still continued with a colonial and post-colonial educational system that teaches the empowerment of European civilization and their continued spread in contemporary times. This is why the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and a delegation from the Nation of Islam from the late 90s into the early 2000s went to Africa, went to the Sudan, met with the leaders of the faction, went to the Congo, went to Ghana, Nigeria, went to Libya in person with researchers and writers and journalists, documenting the truth.
And I can
reported it so that we don't have to rely on BBC, CNN, Fox, and ABC.
Yes, exactly.
And this is what we have to do. We don't have to go too far to research our own history. We are already right here. But we must document it in such a way that it empowers our next generation so that we don't have to be scrambling for information when those detrimental times come. And with reparations, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, I've been looking at this, saying to myself that, you know, this is, with all of the conversations we're having, yes, we're paying attention to the referendum, but yes, I agree with you. We must ground this in the works of Professor Van Sertima and the reparations conversation. This must become part of that question. All right. In the meantime, though, what do you think is the significance of the referendum today? What makes today's referendum on Essequibo in Venezuela particularly significant? How does it fit into the regional, the broader regional dynamics? Yeah.
So there are a few different theories on that. One is that President Nicolas Maduro is under social pressures within the borders of his own country, and a move like this would be seen as very nationalistic, with patriotic intentions to increase the wealth pool of his country. But we have to bear in mind, and all of us have to bear in mind, that what he is proposing is to take CARICOM territory. It's not just Guyana, but it's part of the union of Jamaica, of Trinidad, of Barbados, and all the other Caribbean nations. That is what is at stake here. We can't just see it as Guyana. The International Court did say nothing should be done to disrupt the tranquility of the region, as it should be respected as a zone of peace. And CARICOM, who have very good relations with Venezuela, reminded Venezuela after the ruling. They said Venezuela cannot, by a referendum or otherwise, violate international law and disregard the order of the World highest court. So there will be other diplomatic and trade and harmonious consequences if they proceed with this. And I think if, let's say, the referendum is in favor of the government taking that action, I think it will be. To be honest, my estimation is that it would probably be about 70% yes. Because you have to bear in mind as well that most of those who oppose the government of Nicolas Maduro are the ones who fled. So if there are 100,000 Venezuelans in Trinidad right now, you do a survey among them, most of them will probably say no. Because they're the ones who are displeased with. As a matter of fact, there are Venezuelans outside of Venezuela who are having little marches and protests and demonstrations in support of Guyana.
I've noticed that. So, and also asking for the sanctions. Yes.
Well.
Yeah. But they're not.
But the thing is, all the ones who support him are the ones who will be voting.
Right.
These ones who have fled Venezuela are not the ones who will be participating in the referendum.
The images that I see coming out of Venezuela, the children are involved, the 8 flags, the Venezuelan sunrises in Essequibo. I mean, it's like a party today in Venezuela. Maduro voted. When I came on air this morning, when I was introducing my program at 6:15, Maduro had already voted. I had to keep checking time. What time is it in Venezuela now? Yes, so we do have that festive thing going on, but there are implications, as you pointed out, wider implications for the region. Many people are saying that they don't see where this will escalate into a war. But a few things are happening, and I want you to comment on this. One is that Brazil has already moved troops along its borders, and they say they're doing this in response to what they see happening in the area. There are already not scuffles but movements of troops from the Venezuela end also. But you talk about a country, Venezuela, that has 28.2 million people, Guyana that has 800,000. We see the United States of America has gone in with Southcom, into Guyana. What are the wider implications of that? What is really happening here? And can we ignore ExxonMobil and the United States behind all of this?
No, we most certainly cannot. Let me recommend to our listeners that they go and see that new movie that just came out on Napoleon. All right? Because for two main reasons. One, of course, and they did not portray Toothpick Overture in the film, even though to us as Caribbean people, that was probably the major part of Napoleon's biography. And second, remember Napoleon reintroduced slavery. So even after slavery was abolished in the French colonies, and Napoleon betrayed and tricked Toothpick Overture, got him to leave Haiti, imprisoned him, and he died under Napoleon, they reintroduced slavery. Now, none of those things were portrayed in the film about Napoleon's life, which simply says one thing. Those episodes in history were not important to them, but they're important to us. Same thing with America, and where they choose to put their military and business footprint, they don't necessarily take into consideration what's in the best interest of the populations that they disrupt. They simply use the term America's vital interest. Look at Henry Kissinger. He died at 100 years old, about 3 or 4 days ago.
It really tests your faith. Believe me, tests your faith. To see the devil,
hailing him as a hero.
Yeah.
He was the architect of depopulation of third-world countries. He was seen as a war criminal.
It makes you wonder about the universe.
But again, it depends on who is doing the talking, who is doing the reporting.
Yes.
So we cannot adopt wholesale America's interests and think that there's some kind of distant intention to benefit us. They're going in for their wealth and their resources, even if it means defending them militarily.
Is Guyana then making a mistake? Is Guyana making a mistake? And why is CARICOM? I heard Professor Mark Curtin calling on CARICOM to convene a summit because he says that a press release, a statement is not enough coming from the CARICOM. He says this is urgent enough for CARICOM to convene a summit. But CARICOM seem to is kowtowing to the United States, and of course the United States is where it is. ExxonMobil, the Shell and oil. Yeah. Remember, they had gone into Venezuela for oil, and this is why they have lifted some of the sanctions. Now now that there is an opportunity, and this is what it seems like to me, I'm not quite sure if they didn't create the opportunity themselves to capture more fully Guyana's oil. Because as it is now, they're saying they're not going to set up a base on Guyana, but they're there with Southcom. That's a militarization of Guyana.
Right.
Because Guyana needs that help.
If America sets up office with nothing but pens, papers, and computers, trust me, that within itself represents military occupation. You don't have to physically see troops in roads and tanks.
So Guyana is making a mistake.
Missile launches.
Is Guyana making a mistake?
Well, the thing is, it's difficult to refer to it as a mistake based on what is perceived as the threat.
Because of the threat, yes.
I mean, even CARICOM, the entire English-speaking population of CARICOM is still less than, you're talking about barely 6 or 7 million people to Venezuela's population.
28.2 million, yes.
Even the military resources of CARICOM would not be sufficient to combat Venezuela militarily.
So this is an opportunity for America.
It is for this reason that our unitary states with seats in various forums, such as the United Nations, with the strengthening and backup of the International Criminal Court, with all of the Petro-Caribe deals and other milestones that there have been in diplomatic relations, that is our strength at this point. To take an ideological position that can put sufficient pressure on Venezuela for them to make visible the consequences of their actions. They're not going to gain anything from a move like that except to be more ostracized, more branded. The Caribbean have been some of their only friends nearby. And now you're going to do this, not just to Guyana. I'm not just looking at it as Guyana. You're going to do that to 15 CARICOM nations who have been there as brothers to you. Do you know that Trinidad and Tobago welcomed the Venezuelan Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, during the COVID, during that whole pandemic scandal? And she, at the time, was on some watch list for the United States.
Yes.
And the American government called for Trinidad to explain why they entertained Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as the basic defender. We defended Venezuela. We stood up against America to defend Venezuela and say that these are our neighbors.
Right.
If I can't go right next door for a diplomatic conversation, and how can I have someone so far away claiming this interference? So we have stood with them. We have been available for their citizens to flee. We've welcomed them with open arms. There's just no logic in taking a position or a stance like that.
Obviously, the regional implications and the impact on regional relations, because already we see where both Ralph Gonsalves and Mia Mottley had to walk back a comment they made, which saw them wanting to sit on the fence. They had come out earlier strongly in favor of Guyana, but then they had walked it back a bit and was kind of straddling both, right? Obviously because of the relations, the regional relations. And they had to call a press conference because the rest of the Caribbean, the people of Barbados, the rest of the Caribbean and so on, people came down at them really hard. So this is how serious it is. And then we have Professor Mark Curtin, who has made this call to CARICOM to say you cannot just be issuing press releases. This is urgent enough for you to call a CARICOM summit on the Guyana-Venezuela dispute and to come out with a resolution to this, calling the Guyana and Venezuela to the table also if needs be. But Venezuela has come out this morning. Well, they did it yesterday. They have literally lashed into CARICOM in a series. I don't know if you saw that response to the CARICOM press release from Maduro's government. I mean, it is scathing against CARICOM. As a matter of fact, he has accused CARICOM of lying straight out. So already we see that happening. Let me take a quick break and come back, Brother David. Minutes, Dr. David Mohammed, live online as we look at the Venezuela-Guyana border dispute. The Essequibo region is in serious dispute, contention. It's been going on for over 200 years, probably more. This is coming from way back. But here we are. The referendum is underway in Venezuela today. In a minute or so, Brother David, because we're totally out of time, regardless of the outcome of the referendum today, what do you think would be the likely scenarios in terms of the diplomatic, the legal, the geopolitical developments that would follow this referendum on Essequibo in Venezuela?
Well, I think that one consequence of this for Venezuela is that they may find that afterwards, by taking this action, that they have even less friends than they had before. Venezuela has borders with Colombia, Brazil, Guyana. Arguably, we can say Trinidad and Tobago, even though there's a 7-mile gulf there. But you have a country that has had neighboring countries accept their citizens by the tens of thousands. And what is so unique about that is, and I think this is very rare, that we have accepted citizens from Venezuela who are displeased with their government while we have still defended their government. You don't see that happening.
Right.
You don't accept persons fleeing a country and then still turn around and defend the country that they're fleeing from, which means we have taken the side of all Venezuelans. So I think President Maduro has to use some wisdom in there and also take into consideration that there are multiple premises that we can look back in and make a claim for some territory. I mean, if we look at the history of Europe, then Belgium was invaded, Germany invaded, Russia, Poland was invaded, France was invaded, you have Ireland and Northern Ireland. Anyone could look back in history and say, you know what? We have the right to go and take another country arbitrarily without any type of consideration for contemporary relations between nations.
Yes.
So it would appear that there's not much thought or not sufficient thought being put into that. And I hope that their advisors could shed some light on that matter. But having said that, I have heard and seen interviews with Venezuelan ambassadors who have completely ruled out any kind of military aggression in the situation.
Yes.
All right, and I believe that we would be spared from having to endure that within our beloved region.
That doesn't rule out skirmishes on the border, and this is where, because we're thinking of Falklands and even, well, definitely Falklands, but it doesn't rule out skirmishes on the border. This is, I think, where there is this uncertainty because there's a political element where Maduro he's taken this to the people. Now, elections coming up in 2024, if the people vote yes on all 5, he's going to have to deliver something. What is he going to deliver? Let us leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And also one last thing, skirmishes with whom? Skirmishes on the border with whom?
Well, with the United States, and we'll see where Brazil stand in all of this. But definitely, but America is already there, even though America has come out to say that there's no military base in Guyana. They don't want to put a military base, but Southcom is already there. Southcom is a military base, you know. But thank you so much, my brother, and we'll continue this conversation. Yes, and we'll see what happens after the referendum. We'll talk again.
Yes, looking forward to it. Thank you so much, and love and blessings to all of Jamaica and all the listeners in the diaspora.
And to you too, my brother. Take care. All right. Our brother David Mohammed there. Wow. 1, do you agree to reject by all means, in accordance with the law, the line fraudulently imposed by the 1899 Paris Arbitration Award, which seeks to deprive us of our Guyana Essequiba? And number two, do you support the 1966 Geneva Agreement as the only valid legal instrument to reach a practical and satisfactory solution for Venezuela and Guyana regarding the controversy over the territory of Guyana Essequiba? And number 3, do you agree with Venezuela's historical position of not recognizing the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice to resolve the territorial controversy over Guyana Essequiba? No. And next question, do you agree to oppose by all legal means Guyana's claim to unilaterally dispose of a sea pending delimitation illegally and in violation of international law? Question, which is the one that Guyana has raised serious objections to, and why Guyana talks about an existential threat. Do you agree with the creation of the Guyana Essequiba state and the development of an accelerated plan for comprehensive care for the current and future population of that territory, which includes, among others, the granting of citizenship and identity card? Venezuela, in accordance with the Geneva Agreement and the international law, consequently incorporating said state on the map of Venezuelan territory? Do you agree with the creation of the Guyana Essequiba state and the development of an accelerated plan for comprehensive care for the current and future population of the territory, which includes, among others, the granting of citizenship and identity card? Venezuela, in accordance with the Geneva Agreement and international law, consequently incorporating said state on the map of the Venezuelan territory. I'm going to go to the phone lines where my brother, Dr. Professor Tunde Biwaji, is standing by. He's live in Kenya, as we told you earlier. Good morning, Prof.
Yes, good morning and good afternoon from here. How are you?
I am well. If you two are well, I'm so happy to make this connection with you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. From all of us here, because we did call but didn't get you on phone, but from all of us here, our deepest condolences on your loss. And glad to know at least that you're in Kenya, you're on African soil and hanging in there.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes. Thank you.
What are you doing in Kenya, Prof? Just a quick question.
Well, yes, there is a conference by Moi University African Studies Institute.
Yes.
And they are trying to devise strategies for reconfiguring African studies. So I was invited to participate in that conference. That was why I came.
Yes.
Daniel Arap Moi was the second president of Kenya. Mm-hmm. The university is named after him.
Yes.
By my, from conversations with many people, I was able to deduce that one of the things which Moi privileged during his tenure as president was education. He started the second university. The first one was started during the colonial days as one of the colleges of the University of London, of which University of the West Indies is one. University of Ibadan is one. Makerere University is one. University of Nairobi is one. University of Accra, Legon is the other.
Yes.
After many years, Daniel Arap Moi, Dr. Moi, became president, and he thought that there needed to be a second university. So Moi University, named after him, after he passed on, is that second university in Kenya.
Okay.
And the other thing that I discovered in conversations with people is that he felt strongly about the education of women. And during his time, he started so many secondary and high schools, especially for women only, for girls only. And that has given a fillip to women education in Kenya. So you can find them in all aspects of life.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Good that that's happening in Kenya. I'm not sure why I'm getting a serious feedback. Are you hearing me okay, Prof?
I'm hearing you very well, and I don't have any problem at all from here.
All right, it's coming back at me, but let me try and figure it out. But in the meantime, well, good that education, that we're seeing that in Kenya, because there is concern in other African countries and also Caribbean countries, wherever we are, for women, not just women, but education generally. There is a situation, and you know, you're in the system, so you understand better than most that more girls are accessing tertiary education than boys. Then how does that differ, say, in those universities you refer to, and in Kenya generally, because of the work of Arap Moi?
Well, the situation in Kenya, what they were aiming at was parity, not privileging one over the other. Africa being, in many instances, patriarchal, at times the tendency before Daniel Arap Moi, was for girls to get married as soon as they reach the age of 18. Before the age of 18, unlike in Jamaica, where you have the age of consent or whatever you call it, and then you do the outing that is done for girls at 16, sweet 16. Here, if you have any alliance with any woman before 18, it is regarded as an offense. But from 18, girls can decide to continue with school, or if they so desire, they could marry and continue with school. The other part of it is that here, at least based on my, little knowledge, I've been in Kenya now. I think this will be about my 5th time.
Yes.
I see what I can regard as parity. I don't think they needed. What Moi did was to bring the girls into the school system to bring about the parity. It's not like in Jamaica where boys are more or less endangered at the tertiary institution, and they have to now do what I call the affirmative action, to encourage boys to get into UWI, for example. There was a time when at UWI, for every, out of every 10, girls, ladies were about 6 to 7. And then they had to introduce that program to encourage boys to enroll. But I don't think that is the situation here.
And yet, and I know you're in Kenya, obviously we're not going to be dwelling on this a lot, and yet, his legacy, Arap Moi's legacy, I remember, covering him a lot, in the early days of this program, that his legacy, is so contested though. Yes,
because, politics in Africa, is always, convoluted, if I could use that term, because in many instances, you said it is contested. Actually, when you look at that program that he had for girls, for girl child, many men were not happy.
Yes.
Because the kind of advantage that they would have had, was not diluted, because the empowering of women diluted that hold, that, if you like, call it, leadership or superiority or advantage which men used to have. Because now that you have, you remember that Wangari Maathai actually won the Nobel Prize.
Yes.
And Obama, during the time of, Tom Boyer, who was a colleague of Jomo Kenyatta, education was privileged. That was when they were airlifting people, of which Obama's father was one of those who were so airlifted to the U.S. for graduate studies. The privileging of education by Daniel Arap Moi was not particularly applauded by men, because it diluted their power, their hold over women.
One of the things that I'd like to do. Yes.
According to the information that I got, every election that Daniel Arap Moi contested, he won, because the women voted for him massively.
I recall that in covering him in the 1990s, and I covered when he was forced out of office. I covered, all the conversations on female genital mutilation and how he was dealing with that. I covered so much about him. So I'm kind of very familiar with how contested his legacy is, and that he was seen as autocratic and a dictator and so on. So on the one hand, as you say, we see this on the continent of Africa a lot. There are these policies that are on the ground that, are favorable in some areas, and then in other areas we have all of these issues that pit the African leader against his own legacy, if you will. It's an interesting conversation, but let me take a quick break. Dr. Biwaji, and I come right back. Biwaji is in Kenya, and I'm just having a conversation with him about what he's seeing on the ground, and it seems the part of the positive, if you call it that, legacy of Daniel Arap Moi is education, and the extent to which women who have been accessing education because of the policies he put in place are now successful and prominent, if you will, participants in society. Let me ask you this, Professor. Have you heard any conversation with the Haiti situation and all of that? I know Kenya had said that they would lead, if you will, the delegation that the United Nations and the U.S. asked them to, of African and Caribbean interferers, for want of a better term, in Haiti's, political situation. But that went to court. Is there an ongoing conversation there in Kenya about it? Have you heard anything?
Oh, not to my knowledge. I have not been in any environment where that was brought up.
Okay.
The only thing that I observe is that it seems to me from, I'm in Eldoret, which I'm told is a city of about 1.something million people, with two very big universities. There is University of Eldoret. There are other universities that are private, and then there is Daniel Arap Moi University, and then you have Polytechnic, and you have various other colleges. One thing I find is what I call the kind of discipline in the society in terms of, respect for other people.
Yes.
Respect for people on the road, the way people drive, even when there are no traffic lights. You know that when you have a city of 1 million plus, and there are no traffic lights, in most of the roads, and in some instances, the roundabouts are very, very small, and people stop. People just stop, for a long time to let other people pass. Pedestrians, and then the city itself has wonderful, pedestrian walkways, which was something I suggested in a conference on reimagining Kingston a few years ago. And I wrote my paper, talking about the Kingston of the future. How you have to have respect for the people. Yes. It's not only who are in vehicular movements, in cars and automobiles and motorbikes and all that. You must accommodate pedestrians. You must accommodate cyclists.
Do you see that? Do you see that coming from a wider place? Because you're talking about values, you're talking about people socialize, you're talking about just how people interact with each other, like Jamaica in the 60s or so on. Is this coming from a broader place of whether it is just community or values instilled in the society or religion? Because we see that in most Muslim countries, for example, where the Islamic State is a kind of a gentler, kinder societies. Do you think it's coming from a certain place that you see this?
I don't see Kenya. Kenya is mostly Christian.
Yes.
Islam is marginal from my understanding, from my...
Oh yes, no, what I meant, Prof, is what do you think? Because take Jamaica, for example, and I know that, for you to notice that is really because you're coming out of a space where there is disregard, where there's no regard for each other on the road, where there's anger and this kind of a thing. And I noticed the very same thing you're talking about when I went to Egypt recently. And my thing was, it probably had something to do with because it's an Islamic state. But here you're talking about another state on the continent of Africa where you're noticing this calmer, gentler society.
But South Africa also, it's in the leadership. Remember what I'm saying now is the roads. Even the small roads, they have pedestrian walkways. Yes. That is, the small roads, whether they are paved or unpaved, you recognize that it is not only vehicles or motorbikes that are on the road. You recognize that people have a right to choose whether to walk. You can imagine if from Mona, from Papin to 3 miles, there are, pedestrian walkway, there are motorbike ways, on the two sides of the road. You widen the road, yes, that is wonderful. But while you widen the road, you then made it impossible for children to walk to school, for people to walk to work, for people to just, be free without having to look whether they are going to be knocked down, by car, by bike. And then the hooting and tooting that you find, there's so much impatience that you find, on our roads in Jamaica is absolutely absent. And you could move around the city day or night without hearing any noise. Noise in terms of boom boxes and, all those...
And night noise, which is really poisonous. I was up. I was jolted out of my sleep at 2:22.
Night noise in Jamaica,
Yes.
It is day and night, nuisance.
Yeah, it is day and night nuisance. It's crazy.
I've been here now going to 3 weeks, and I have not had a vehicle passing by me and making my stomach bouncing and, flipping.
Not to be watching, I think you're missing Jamaica already.
I'm
how are you going to manage without that?
Somebody passing by your yard and all your window panes are vibrating, your bed is jumping on the ground. I mean, what kind of life is that? What kind of liberty is that?
It's sinful. I'm telling you. I'm laughing here, but I'm very tired. I was jolted out of bed this morning at 2:22 because a party started from about 6 in some hills and never finished until 4:40. So here I am. Yeah. But it's poisonous, It's not good for your health, and this is the thing that we are not considering. Yeah.
And even when you go to a hotel, restaurant, nightclub or something,
yes,
the kind of music that you listen to there is, I mean, you can really sit and put your drink on the table and follow.
Yeah, I understand. So you just, a lot of us are saying, we should go to Kenya for holidays. So how do we get to Kenya now?
Yes, it would be a wonderful, and I went to Kipchoge's stadium. Mm-hmm. His house is in Eldoret. Eldoret is regarded as the city of champions.
Yes.
Because out of every 10 marathon runner champions, mm-hmm. Eldoret has produced 8 of them.
Oh,
so
really?
it is known as the city of champions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we went to a place in Rift Valley, mm-hmm. Just to see the delights of,
Yes.
Yeah, and just to enjoy nature, and just to be there, and just to relax. And you get there, they don't even play any boombox. You can order your thing and you're calm, you can drink, mm-hmm. and the drink can go down your throat without it getting blown out.
Yes, it's not white rum. It's not white. It's not one punch. Dr. Biwadi, you're the best.
What I'm trying to emphasize is that freedom, liberty, mm-hmm. Must come with responsibility and regard for other people.
Yes, I agree.
You are not any less free, if you have respect for the right of the other person to his or her peace.
Let us be kind to each other. It's a practice, something we have to practice. Finally, Dr. Biwadi, in just a minute, what's the route to Kenya now from Jamaica? How does one? What's the process?
Oh, I think it's I tried to find a very cheap flight, mm-hmm. and my total flight came to about 12 or 1300.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I flew straight to New York, mm-hmm. and you know that you can get New York from Kingston for about 400 or thereabout, mm-hmm. and then another 700 or something mm-hmm. from New York to Nairobi. And then you're in Kenya. Mm-hmm. That's just about 1,100.
Yeah, in the greater scheme of things, it's pretty reasonable. Not that it's cheap, but in understanding what the fares are to the continent of Africa, it's right there.
When you compare that with Kingston to London at a certain time of the year, Kingston to London alone could be 1,200.
Yeah, alone. Yeah, alone. And you don't reach Kenya
yet. That is just a distance of just about 8 hours.
Yeah.
All
right. So you're going to be there for
Have you made your trip? Have you, your earpiece trip to Nigeria? Has it come up?
We heard it was going to happen recently, and then nothing, and then we heard again. So I'm just kind of holding on until I hear that it's really solid. But I haven't heard anything in recent times. But if you hear anything, please let us know. I'm in contact with them, so once it happens, I'll be on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I hope I'll be in Nigeria when you are coming.
Of course, you better be.
So that you can have some good pounded yam and some good palm wine.
Yes. And some good jollof rice, although that's Ghana, but it's Nigeria too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Enjoy Kenya, and we talk when you get back.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much. Yes, all the best.
And to you too, Professor Tunde Biwadi there in Kenya, who's in Tanzania, with a very special guest who is a contemporary of our beloved Dada, Walter Rodney. So, Jerry, we just spoke to you. Now it's ringing without an answer. Not quite sure if you're listening. All right. In the meantime, and I'll cut into it as needs be. On Friday, the International Court of Justice made a ruling on the request from Guyana that the court intervene in the referendum that's currently underway. So I want to play that for you. It's pretty short, the court's findings and the court's ruling.
The sitting is open. The court meets in this public sitting to deliver its decision on the request for the indication of provisional measures submitted by the Cooperative Republic of Guyana in the case concerning the arbitral award of 3 October 1899, Guyana versus Venezuela. Gudjat Haq Wolfram, who duly participated in both the deliberations and the final vote, is, for reasons made known to me, unable to take his seat on the bench today. I recall that on 28 March 2018, Guyana filed in the registry of the court an application instituting proceedings against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela with respect to a dispute concerning the legal validity and binding effect of the award regarding the boundary between the colony of British Guyana and the United States of Venezuela on 3 October 1899, to which I shall refer as the 1899 award or the award. In its judgment of 18 December 2020, to which I shall refer as the 2020 judgment, the court found that it has jurisdiction to entertain the application filed by Guyana insofar as it concerns the validity of the 1899 award and the related question of the definitive settlement of the land boundary dispute between Guyana and Venezuela. The court also found that it did not have jurisdiction to entertain the claims of Guyana arising from events that occurred after the signature of the agreement to resolve the controversy between Venezuela and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland over the frontier between Venezuela and British Guyana, signed at Geneva on 17 February 1966, to which I shall refer as the Geneva Agreement. I further recall that in its judgment of 6 April 2023, to which I shall refer as the 2023 judgment, the court rejected Venezuela's preliminary objection concerning the exercise of the court's jurisdiction and found that it could adjudicate upon the merits of Guyana's claims, insofar as they fall within the scope of the court's jurisdiction as defined in the operative clause of the 2020 judgment. I finally recall that on 30 October 2023, Guyana filed a request for the indication of provisional measures referring to Article 41 of the statute and Articles 73 and 74 of the Rules of Court. In its request, Guyana states that on 23 October 2023, the government of Venezuela, through its National Electoral Council, published a list of 5 questions that it plans to put before the Venezuelan people in a consultative referendum on 3 December 2023. According to the applicant, the purpose of the questions is, I quote, to obtain responses that would support Venezuela's decision to abandon these proceedings and to resort instead to unilateral measures to resolve the controversy with Guyana by formally annexing and integrating into Venezuela all of the territory at issue in these proceedings, which comprises more than 2/3 of Guyana. End of quotation. In accordance with the usual practice, I shall not read the introductory paragraphs of the order, which set out the procedural history of the case. I shall also omit or summarize some other paragraphs. I shall accordingly begin the reading of the order at paragraph 13. The full text of the order will, of course, be available at the close of the sitting. The court begins by recalling that it already set out in its 2 judgments the general background and context of the dispute between Guyana and Venezuela, which dates back to a series of events that took place during the second half of the 19th century, when Guyana was still a British colony known as British Guyana. At that time, the United Kingdom and Venezuela both claimed the territory located between the mouth of the Essequibo River on the east and the Orinoco River to the west. In 1897, an arbitral tribunal was established to settle the boundary between British Guyana and Venezuela. In its 1899 award, the Arbitral Tribunal granted the entire mouth of the Orinoco River and the land on either side to Venezuela. It granted to the United Kingdom, in respect of British Guyana, the land to the east extending to the Essequibo River. Between November 1990 and June 1904, a joint Anglo-Venezuelan commission demarcated the boundary established by the 1899 award. On 10 January 1905, after the boundary had been demarcated, the British and Venezuelan commissioners produced an official boundary map and signed an agreement accepting inter alia the coordinates of the points listed were correct. On 14 February 1962, Venezuela informed the Secretary General of the United Nations that it considered there to be a dispute between itself and the United Kingdom concerning the demarcation of the frontier between Venezuela and British Guyana. The government of the United Kingdom, for its part, rejected that contention, asserting that the question had been finally settled by the 1899 award. After various attempts to resolve the matter failed, the representatives of the United Kingdom, Venezuela, and British Guyana signed the Geneva Agreement on 17 February 1966. On 26 May 1966, Guyana, having obtained independence, became a party to that agreement. Attempts were made in the ensuing decades to resolve the dispute through different means of settlement envisaged in the Geneva Agreement, all of which failed, leading the Secretary General of the United Nations in January 2018 under the Geneva Agreement to choose the court as the means to resolve the dispute. Having recalled this general background, the court then turns to the requirements for the indication of provisional measures. With respect to the question of jurisdiction, the court observes that it may indicate provisional measures only if the provisions relied on by the applicant appear, at least prima facie, to afford a basis jurisdiction could be founded. In the present case, the court has already found in its 2020 judgment as jurisdiction to entertain the application filed by Guyana on 29 March 2018, insofar as it concerns the validity of the 1899 award and the related question of the definitive settlement of the land boundary dispute between Guyana and Venezuela. The court further recalls that in its 2023 judgment, it found that it could adjudicate upon the merits of the claims of Guyana insofar as they fell within the scope of the operative clause of the 2020 judgment. The court then proceeds to consider the other requirements for the indication of provisional measures. The court recalls that its powers under Article statute to indicate provisional measures has as its object the preservation of the respective rights claimed by the parties in a case, pending its decision on the merits thereof. It follows that the court must be concerned to preserve by such measures the rights which may subsequently be adjudged by it to belong to either party. Therefore, the court may ascertain this power only if it is satisfied that the rights ascertained by a party requesting provisional measures are at least plausible. At this stage of the proceedings, however, the court is not called upon to determine definitively whether the rights which Guyana seeks to protect exist. It need only decide whether the rights claimed by Guyana on the merits and for which it is seeking protection are plausible. Moreover, a link must exist between the rights whose protection is sought and the provisional measures being requested. The court observes that Guyana contends that it seeks the preservation and protection of its right to the territory awarded to it by the 1899 award, pending the court's determination of the validity of that award and to the integrity of its territory, or alternatively, its right to the settlement by the court of the land boundary between Guyana and Venezuela. The court recalls its finding in the 2020 judgment that a land boundary dispute exists between the parties. It further observes that the territory which forms the object of that dispute was awarded to British Guyana in the 1899 award. In light of the foregoing, the court considers that Guyana's right to sovereignty over the territory in question is plausible. The court then turns to a requirement of a link between the rights claimed by Guyana that the court has found to be plausible and the provisional measures requested. The court observes that one of the provisional measures requested by Guyana seeks to ensure that Venezuela does not I quote, take any actions that are intended to prepare or allow for the exercise of sovereignty or de facto control over any territory that was awarded to British Guyana in the 1899 award. End of quotation. The court considers that this measure is aimed at protecting Guyana's right, which the court has found plausible. The court concludes, therefore, that a link exists between the rights claimed by Guyana that the court has found to be plausible and the aforementioned requested provisional measure. The court next notes that, pursuant to Article 41 of its statute, it has the power to indicate provisional measures when irreparable prejudice could be caused to the rights which are subject of judicial proceedings, or when the alleged disregard of such rights may entail irreparable consequences. However, the power of the court to indicate provisional measures will be exercised only if there is urgency, in the sense that there is a real and imminent risk that irreparable prejudice will be caused to the rights claimed before the court gives its final decision. The condition of urgency is met when the acts susceptible of causing irreparable prejudice can occur at any moment before the court makes a final decision in the case. The court must therefore consider whether such risk exists at this stage of the proceedings. The court is not called upon, for the purposes of its decision on the request for indication of provisional measures, to reach a decision on either party's position on the merits, but to determine whether the circumstances require the indication of provisional measures for the protection of the rights found to be plausible. It cannot at this stage make definitive findings of facts, and the right of each party to submit arguments in respect of the merits remains unaffected by the court's decision on the request for the indication of provisional measures. Having previously determined that Guyana's right to sovereignty over the territory awarded to British Guyana by the 1899 award is plausible, and that there is a link between this right and one of the provisional measures requested, the court turns next to the question whether irreparable prejudice could be caused to this right and whether there is urgency, in the sense that there is a real and imminent risk that irreparable prejudice will be caused to this right before the court gives its final decision. The court recalls that the fifth question of the referendum refers explicitly to the creation of the Guyana Essequibo state, as well as an accelerated and comprehensive plan to be developed for the granting of Venezuelan citizenship and identity cards to the population of that territory, consequently incorporating the Guyana Essequibo state into the map of Venezuelan territory. The court further observes that Venezuela's Supreme Tribunal of Justice has confirmed the constitutionality of the questions to be posed in the referendum. The court notes that Venezuela stated during the oral proceedings that it will not turn its back on what the people decide in the referendum of 3 December 2023. On 24 October 2023, the president of Venezuela, Mr. Nicolás Maduro Moros, publicly stated that the referendum would give Venezuelans, for the first time, the means to take a collective decision as a country. Other official statements suggest that Venezuela is taking steps with a view towards acquiring control over and administering the territory in dispute. For instance, on 6 November 2023, the Minister of Defense of Venezuela, General Vladimir Padrino Lopez, made an appeal to go to combat with reference to the territory in question. Furthermore, Venezuelan military officials announced that Venezuela is taking concrete measures to build an airstrip to serve as, I quote, logistical support point for the integral development of the Essequibo, end of quote. The court considers that in light of the strong tension that currently characterizes the relations between the parties, the aforementioned circumstances present a serious risk of Venezuela acquiring and exercising control and administration of the territory in dispute in the present case. It therefore concludes that there is a risk of irreparable prejudice to the right claimed by Guyana in the present proceedings that the court has found plausible. The court further considers that Venezuela's expressed readiness to take action with regard to the territory in dispute in these proceedings at any moment following the referendum scheduled for 3 December 2023 demonstrates that there is urgency, in the sense that there is a real and imminent risk of irreparable prejudice to Guyana's plausible right before the court gives its final decision. The court concludes from all of the aforementioned considerations that the conditions for the indication of provisional measures are met. It is therefore necessary, pending its final decision, for the court to indicate certain measures in order to protect the plausible right claimed by Guyana as identified by the court. The court recalls that it has the power, under its statute, when a request for provisional measures has been made, to indicate measures that are in whole or in part other than those requested. In the present case, having considered the terms of the provisional measures requested by Guyana and the circumstances of the case, the court finds that the measures to be indicated need not be identical to those requested. The court observes that the situation that currently prevails in the territory in dispute is that Guyana administers and exercises control over that area. The court considers that, pending the final decision in the case, Venezuela must refrain from taking any action which would modify that situation. The court emphasizes that the question of the validity of the 1899 award and the related question of the definitive settlement of the land boundary dispute between Guyana and Venezuela are matters for the court to decide at the merits stage. The court recalls that Guyana has requested it to indicate measures aimed at ensuring the non-aggravation of the dispute with Venezuela. When indicating provisional measures for the purpose of preserving specific rights, the court may also indicate provisional measures with a view to preventing the aggravation or extension of a dispute when it considers that the circumstances so require. In the current case, having considered all the circumstances, in addition to the specific measure that it has decided to take, the court deems it necessary to indicate an additional measure directed at both parties and aimed at ensuring the non-aggravation of the dispute between them. The court recalls that its orders indicating provisional measures under Article 41 of the statute have binding effect and thus create international legal obligations for any party to whom the provisional measures are addressed. I shall now read out the operative part of the order. For these reasons, the court indicates the following provisional measures. 1. Unanimously. Pending a final decision in the case, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela shall refrain from taking any action which would modify the situation that currently prevails in the territory in dispute, whereby the Cooperative Republic of Guyana administers and exercises control over that area. 2. Unanimously. Both parties shall refrain from any action which might aggravate or extend the dispute before the court or make it more difficult to resolve. I shall now call upon the registrar to read the operative part of the order in French.
All right. So we would like to see the International Court of Justice doing a very similar thing on Israel and Palestine, which is why I like number 1, 2, 3, 4, number 3 on the 5 questions referendum that Venezuela has. Do you agree with Venezuela's historical position of not recognizing the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice to resolve the territorial controversy over Guyana Essequibo? With you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa, and we're going through until 10 o'clock. The Big A comes in at 10 with the Sunday Sunshine. We're not able to get Jerry on the phone lines, and interestingly enough, I spoke to him in the middle, or just when we ended the interview with Professor Biwaji. So I'm not quite sure what has happened, but Jerry's in Tanzania, and we intended to make a quick link with him there. You know, we've been taking note of Jamaica's treatment of Haitians coming into Jamaica, and you know, it's an interesting thing. The government of Jamaica, the Andrew Holness-led administration, has taken an interesting stance on Haiti, an interesting stance on Israel, Palestine. They are doing something about us without us. The question I need to ask and have answered is it a fact that majority of us Jamaicans would prefer or would want the Prime Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and those who are in Parliament to deport Haitian refugees as soon as they land on the island? Is it a fact that that is what we want? Are they doing this in our name? Is it a fact that we want these very same people on our behalf to support Israel 100% over Palestine and the babies who are being killed, the genocide and the ethnic cleansing? Is it a fact that we want the leaders, those who we pay their salaries, is it a fact that we want them to be supportive of Israel 100% and to come out and say it and then tongue-in-cheek to say you're not speaking on behalf of the administration in the way that we saw Mr. Hill doing? Is it a fact that that is what we want? I'm flabbergasted. In no universe at all can I even begin to understand that thinking from the current administration. I can understand the extent to which you are controlled by the United States, but that has been the case for years and years and years and years. And yet we have managed over time to still stand on the right side of history many, many times. When did we get to this place that you, in our name, would deport Haitian refugees, would support Israel in their genocide in Palestine, and so much more? Last Wednesday, we saw the senior advisor and strategist in the Ministry of Tourism, Delana Seavright, announcing that resulting from the increased numbers of new as well as non-stop flights into Jamaica, he was saying that it was projected to bring the visitors tally to 4 million by year's end. And talk about an income of $4.1 billion US for the same period. Well, nota bene. Between income to Jamaica and income to Jamaicans. Because as I was saying before, Jamaica and Jamaicans are two different things, and we have to begin to make that distinction. So when them say Jamaica, themselves them are talk about. Right? So we have to ask now where we fall in all of that. How are we identified in them policies? And when them are referred to us, what do they call us? Squatters? Lawbreakers? What them call we? Hooligans? Less than human? Them have all kinds of names for us, but definitely when them say Jamaica, it's not me and you them talking about. We know that. And the question is, how many Jamaicans, aside from those directly employed in the industry or affiliated with the industry, how many Jamaicans stand to benefit from this billion-dollar project? Affluence amid widespread poverty. That is a definition of prosperity in Jamaica, by the way. I can't get over Jamaica's attitude to the Haitians, I know I say it and I come back to it and so on, but I really just cannot get over it. It boggles the mind. It's inhumane the way you're treating the Haitians, our brothers and sisters from Haiti, who are refugees. When do refugees who come into Haiti, into Jamaica, get air-conditioned buses? What do you have to look like? The Dominican Republic, Haitians are treated the very same way. We see how Jamaica and the Dominican Republic, encouraging attitude, man, that the Andrew Holness-led administration has against Haiti. We need some loud voices from the Israel. We're watching how Jamaica treating Palestine. We're watching, but karma is a thing. We're watching the international organizations. We're watching every. By the way, talking about that, I talked about UNICEF last week, and somebody took me on seriously. But I tell you, I stand by what I said. because I said UNICEF, United Nations, all of them, International Court of Justice, it don't matter what you call yourself, all of you, international law, international organizations, you have made yourself null and void because of what is ongoing, not just in Israel and Palestine, but foregrounded because of what Israel is, that genocide and ethnic cleansing that is happening on your watch. You have made yourself null and void. I want you to go and look up the person who is the director of UNICEF, and I want you also to go and see who she's married to. She's married to the person who's the head of BlackRock. No, I don't have no whole of a time to talk about BlackRock this morning, but if the director of UNICEF is married to the head of BlackRock, then that explains why children. Anyway, can I go to Jerry? Jerry, you there? Morning, Jerry. Morning again. Jerry Small on the phone line.
How you doing?
Boy, Jerry, me there, I getting a little bit angry, but me come right back now that me hear your voice.
Yeah, man, I tell you, I don't get angry more time unless. I am here, as you know, in Tanzania with my hostess who was introduced me to our most interesting person.
Yes.
Mrs. Betty Delphus Ingleton. Mm-hmm. And his name is Walter, a contemporary of our Walter Rodney, born the same year, 1942. Uh-huh. Walter, hello. Say hello to Erica.
Hello, hi.
Greetings, Walter. Greetings, how you doing?
Very well, thank you, and you?
I am
Lovely
well.
to hear.
I'm well, thank you. Good to hear you also.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. So, Jerry, tell me a little bit.
We're having a very wonderful time listening to Jerry, you know.
Yes.
All right, back to you, Kabu.
Yes.
Just because I say interesting hearing from him, he says now is the end of it, right?
No. We're going to hear more from you. But Jerry, tell me a little bit about him, your guest.
Yeah, he's a contemporary of Walter Rodney, same age, same year, born.
Mm-hmm.
He published. All right. Which book did you publish?
How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
He published How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
Oh, wow! What an achievement! Yeah. So you were part of that phenomenal seminal work.
Yes, I published it.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, because we read that, that is part of our biblical kind of thing. We have that as a Bible, as a Bible. So tell us about that relationship with yourself and Walter Rodney.
Tell us about the relationship with yourself and Walter Rodney. You met him on his first tenure in Africa, didn't you?
Yeah. Walter Rodney, yes. I mean, I thought you said maybe the...
No. What happened is that Walter has been a diplomat.
No.
Hold on 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Walter has been a diplomat in Addis Ababa from about 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And when he returned to Tanzania in time to meet Walter Rodney. What is your last name, Walter?
Bogoya.
How you spell it?
Bogoya, B-G-O-Y-A.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a publisher, but he was in a diplomatic service for years before that.
At that time, yes, and I left and joined the publishing house in 1972, and the book came out in 1973 at the beginning, but we did that book with what's her name in London? What's her name?
All right, it will come.
Video.
Yes. Huntley, Jessica Huntley.
Okay.
Jessica Huntley.
Jessica Huntley from London, Bogle over to your production, publication.
We did together. It was a co-publication between them and us,
And with Walter, I want you to tell me a little bit about Walter Rodney, what you thought of him in those early days.
Oh, I mean, he was a very beautiful person, a great brother, very comrade, and very articulate, very sharp, hardworking, extremely hardworking, and with a fantastic discipline, of work, because he was at the university and sometimes we would go to his house and we would all be, you know, in the living room, and he would be working in his office, in his room, and he wouldn't come out for hours. And
he would not come out for hours.
He would be drinking and carrying on, and he would be working. So that's tremendous discipline. But he also, you know, really loved to dance very much. I think at the time the dance was the ska. It was great dancing with the ska, and a fantastic brother. And also, by the way, he used to every Sunday play cricket at the Gymkhana Club, which many of us thought were both a cricket and the Gymkhana Club was a very petty bourgeois,
white people
institution. How did Walter Rodney fit in there? Little knowing that, of course, in Jamaica, cricket is sort of like a people's...
And Guyana,
people's sport. So, you know, but we became very close friends, and... he was
a close friend of Nyerere, too.
And,
how you pronounce Nyerere?
Nyerere.
Yeah.
And I still am in touch with Patricia and, you know, Rodney and the children and so on. So, there was long-lasting friendship and comradeship. So
we were just talking earlier about Pan-Africanism and what it means in this time as a scholar publisher yourself. Your own take on where we are with that, has it become almost irrelevant?
On the contrary, it has become relevant. It has become even more relevant than ever before. I think what's happening is that we are so disjointed. There isn't, unfortunately, a leadership like you had during the Nkrumah time or during Nyerere's time. We don't have a very strong leadership on an African continental scale to drive the process. But on the other hand, there is the movement is strong in different places. I mean, there's a global Pan-African movement in North America, for example, that I'm aware of.
Barbados, to surprise.
Barbados, of course, and I was lucky to visit last year. And so there are these movements, but I think there is more in the Caribbean, particularly around the restitution, not restitution, not repatriation, no. Reparation, around reparation movement. It's very strong in the Caribbean, not so strong on the continent. But, in fact, I personally, I think that the leadership of this movement is now in the Caribbean and more than anywhere else, because I don't even see it in North America with such a grassroots scale as it is in the Caribbean. But I think also that unfortunately we don't have that leadership of the continent right now, except incidentally in South Africa with this young radical fellow, you know,
Malema, Julius Malema.
Who is talking very much about, you know, giving Pan-Africanism a very contemporary perspective, and particularly defense of movement of African people on the continent and so on. Now, some countries, Rwanda, Kenya, and I believe, I don't know if it's Burkina Faso or some other country recently, where they've declared that, you know, black people from anywhere can visit without visas. I think that's very good development.
Sorry, 1 minute. And as Betty, this is Betty Delphos, this was in England, the consul for Jamaica was telling us earlier. For years in Uganda, it was declared a criminal offense to disparage or to curse non-citizens of Uganda who are black as outsiders or what? Prohibited from referring to any black people from anywhere in the world as foreigners in Uganda. $10,000 US fine.
Yes. And of course,
we're not hearing Betty too well. Can we have? Hi. Well, how are you doing? Yes, welcome. Yes.
Well, thanks. Well, thanks. I just wanted to Walter was just speaking of Julius Malema and how he has no he's keeping the movement of the Pan-African movement alive, and he just spoke at the opening of the first Pan-African Institute in South Africa. There's now a university, Pan-African University in South Africa. Yes, right. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Of course. And the thing about it, the concern is, and we're having these conversations among ourselves as Pan-Africans in this part of the world as to, you know, whether or not we need to, which I just heard Walter reference it, this contemporary Pan-Africanism is, what does it look like? Do we need a more cohesive kind of a definition of what it is? Because it seems so splintered in so many different, you know, areas that sometimes you're not even sure where your foothold is. And many of us now are saying we are African-centered, moving away from what Pan-Africanism is beginning to look like. You know, and this is why I pose a question, do we have a crisis in even what we are referring to as Pan-Africanism?
Yeah, one thing.
Well, I mean, you know, there are so many possibilities. It's such a huge idea. It's just the definition of an elephant, everybody touching one side of the elephant and singing this entire elephant.
Yeah. Yes.
Pan-Africanism is such a great idea. It embraces all people on the African continent. It embraces not just the unity of historical experience, of cultural, economic, and the sharing of this.
And should be military experience.
Yeah, but also speak to the future of black people and you know, here, outside the continent and everywhere, because fundamentally the problems that they face still are the same. You know,
yes.
Whether it's in South America, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Mexico, in Europe, in North America, the problems are still the same. And so just as the struggle to realize these things it has to be united.
Yeah. So what is the next step? Should Pan-Africanism answer? Should Pan-Africanism answer the question of? So we had during His Imperial Majesty Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Amilcar Cabral, and them. We were talking independence then, you know, and post-colonialism and getting out of colonialism. Those were some of the issues we were dealing with. We still, I think, have to deal with the colonial project. But what is the next step for Pan-Africanism in terms of what are we hoping to achieve, and what should we be looking at now that most of these countries have received so-called independence?
Yeah, but you just said they received so-called independence. How do we realize
Realize it. Make it real.
Yes.
I think, for instance, neoliberalism is definitely contrary to Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
Because neoliberalism defines, it's centered around extreme individualism,
yes,
private accumulation of wealth, disregard for the common good,
and disregard for autonomy. Yes.
You know,
yes,
and these are completely against the values of African people, as exemplified in the Ubuntu philosophy. For instance.
Yes,
you know.
Yes,
and so the point here, in my view, is how do we continue to pass on these values, to struggle for these values among the young people, teach these values, institutionalize them wherever we can, and therefore make the Pan-Africanist struggle a living struggle, not just some kind of academic activity, but reflected in the way we live, in the way we work. You know, these are the things that are important to because as essentially these values still exist among every black people, no matter where they are.
And
Kabu, you would appreciate how much when the ladies, you yourself, when the ladies get involved with something, there's no stopping it.
Yes.
And Betty herself is such a focal point, although she might not want to in the whole understanding of these things.
Yes. Yeah, I know, and I really appreciate. And I really appreciate the work that she's doing in Tanzania. I know we communicated one time because I was thinking of going there during COVID. You know, Betty, I don't know if you remember my emails, but we just couldn't.
I think so.
Yes,
absolutely.
We were thinking of coming in for. But go ahead.
To answer your question, I mean, I want to go back to the point Walter just made.
Yes,
that and the question should be asked, did we really achieve independence?
Yes.
Don't you think that struggle is still alive on
exactly,
and total independence, especially when you look at what's happening in Jamaica? So it's not. So I don't think we need to ask the question, what is it we're doing after independence?
And this is the point, and this is why I said so-called, and this is
the dynamic.
Yes.
Of Pan-African movement. Because the struggle is still real.
I agree.
And it is still continuing.
I agree.
And what we are trying to do, enlightened, we just had a conversation that people of our generation who were literally soldiers on the ground, who literally was at the forefront of educating and enlightening, and giving enlightenment to a generation. Or people of our generation. It is now also our responsibility to give it to the generation that is coming up.
That's critical.
That's the contribution that we make, because it might not be realized in our lifetime. That's a mistake. A lot of people think that, hey, it has to be hurried and it has to happen in our lifetime. No, it will not most likely happen in your lifetime. Your responsibility is to make a constant contribution.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Make a constant contribution. Yeah. So, and through dialogue, communication, and especially now when we know that life is dynamic, so we have so many issues now, global issues that's impacting this movement. As you are aware, what's happening now in the COP28 conference in Dubai, the idea that the world, the climate is we are 1.5 degrees away from states like countries in the south, like Jamaica, Barbados, and so being totally wiped out or submerged.
By the way,
but we have all gone. But our leaders from Africa and the African diaspora have all gone there with their begging bowls, and that again speaks to the question that I'm.
Not our leaders. No, wait a minute. Let me finish. Let me just say this: that. When you talk about where the Pan-African movement ought to be now, I think crucial it is, and first and foremost, we need to realize how important it is for South nations and nations of the Caribbean to now align themselves with Africa, because what is upon us, what is upon us now, the possibility of a complete wiping out of our habitat.
Agreed.
You see? So if you want to, what is crucial now for the Pan-African movement is to identify how serious it is that association and alignments must take place.
May I say
I totally agree. Yes, go ahead, Jerry. Yes.
May I say this, Kabu? It brings me around to Venezuela wanting to eat up one of the rich black African, Afro-Asian states, Guyana.
Yes. This is what we were discussing this morning, and obviously a very complex issue because of the historical context. But like yourself, I am firmly on the side of Guyana in all of this. At the same time, we find ourselves front and face with the United States and ExxonMobil and all of these conglomerates who are also have planted themselves with the South Command, Southcom. Like AFRICOM now in Guyana, because they're fitting now to go fight against Venezuela. So we also have that. Jerry, there's also another thing that Walter said, that and to bring it to the point that Betty's making, which is that so one of the crises I think for Pan-Africanism is a neoliberal project, because so many of our people have bought into the neoliberal project. And we heard Walter just said.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I'm very glad this point is raised up, because we've been worrying a lot about this information we hear about Venezuela trying to attack Guyana.
Yes.
I didn't realize, though, a point we just made, that Guyana is being used,
yes,
as a launch pad for attack on Venezuela. Now, that complicates the matter.
It does. It does.
But on the other hand, I think what we need to work is then work on Venezuela and
yes,
work on Guyana as well.
Yes.
That Guyana should not put itself in a place to serve the interests of imperialism against brothers Venezuela.
Yes.
And at the same time, that Venezuela must understand, and not hurry up to launch some kind of attack.
Yeah, they have a referendum going on today with 5 questions. It's the 5th question, of course, an existential threat to Guyana, so that it is serious. We're not taking it lightly around here. But at the same time, what does that mean for the region? The implications for the region not looking so good at all, because here we have another proxy situation, because this is what it seems to be leading up to. It seems, as we see in Yemen, that proxy war that's going on in Yemen. They're about to move it into the Caribbean. This and Latin America, and this is why this is such a critical moment for us. Betty just pointed out that our one of our things our mandate is really to get together, to understand that this is our time to work together more than any other time on all of these climate change and all of the other issues, including these threats that are coming into our water.
But there's also this big oil deal thing going on in Guyana.
Yes. Yes, ExxonMobil. Yes.
And so there's a lot of oil there. So Western oil corporations are right there, and of course they'll probably be trying to destabilize both Guyana to their advantage.
Both. Yes, of course, yes.
Guyana if Guyana is involved in trying to save itself against that, then they can obviously get put in conditions that they want.
All of those side issues, they're attempting to make it mainstream to actually pull people's attention away from the main issue.
That's right.
Like, for example, what is happening in Gaza, with the Israelis and the Palestinians. Netanyahu would like the world to believe that it's a war still between the Jews and the Palestinians. It is not.
Never was.
It is not. That's the smoke screen. It really is about his quest for global economic power through the building of a new canal.
A canal and a pipeline.
And a pipeline through Gaza.
Yes.
And what it is really about is literally, in his mind, clearing the squatters from his land.
Which he has said, and I heard, I heard Kamala Harris saying yesterday at COP that America does not agree with that, which means that it is very much out in the open on the table and has already been raised to America. And this is why she's saying on a public stage that they will never agree with it. But
no, because America don't want Israel to be competing with them at this crumbling stage as their existence, to be an emerging superpower.
Yeah.
It is not to their benefit.
Kabu.
Yes, Jerry.
You remember, sir, for over 6 months I've been referring to Israel as the 51st state of America.
Yes.
And then last week I heard a Jewish commentator saying the same thing.
Yes, I heard.
The problem with Israel now is they're going rogue.
Yeah.
And that's why Kamala and everyone is saying that they're going rogue.
Yes, they are.
What it is Netanyahu wants to be the new Putin.
Yeah,
the new Putin and the new Ping, because he wants to position Israel now as a world power, and he knows that he can do that by building this canal.
Yes.
Against America. He has a plan to be independent of America.
That's absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
To be a power for America to reckon with.
And knowing
the broker.
Knowing that, right? Yeah. Who controls the narrative in America?
That's it.
The Zionist Jews.
Yeah, money.
The Zionist Jews. Precisely.
Yes.
It is there.
I am so sorry that I'm completely out of time. Betty and Jerry and Walter, listen, I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm so sorry that we're out of time. I really would like to continue this conversation because
thank you so much. Lovely to talk.
Yeah, thank you.
I will be here for 3 more Sundays.
Right. So I'll be linking with you for those 3 more Sundays.
as we say in Tanzania, in Swahili, asante sana dadangu. Karibu tena.
Look at that now, asante sana.
Hey, well on, Kabu, you know what I found out? What is the pet name for Tanzania?
What?
Bongo.
Bongo, direct translation to Swahili means brain. So in Tanzania, in the same way Jamaica is called the Rock, Tanzania is Bongo land. Meaning this is where you have to, this is the land where you must use your brain. So bongo is the Swahili word for brain.
Well, Jerry, this is just straight showing off.
Has been brain Jerry for all his life but not know it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is fitting. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Walter. And we'll link next week.
Thank you.
All right. All right, live in Tanzania there, Walter, Jerry, Betty. This is what we're saying goodbye for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. We're watching the referendum in Venezuela. The big A is in. Thanks to everyone who listened. Thanks to my guest, Dr. Godfrey Vincent, and also to Jerry and the team there, and David Mohammed, and to you who have listened, tuned in, and participated in the program today. 10 o'clock, and we're making the way now for the Big A inside of the Sunday Sunshine. Morning, Big A. How you doing? Are you voting today? In the Venezuela referendum. Oh. I'm sorry. All right, we have anything to talk about?
Not really.
Okay.
Maybe small.
Okay, great. Okay, so we leave you with that because Big A said there's nothing to talk about, so be gone.